Hi, I'm Heidi Thompson, founder of Global Art Reproduction, and welcome to the inaugural episode of our podcast. We titled this episode The Art of the Remix, and the conversation starts with a discussion on art reproduction trends and then shifted to address how artists are using technology in ways to create original work. So think Andy Warhol, think Sister Corita Kent. Experts featured in this episode include Ian Harker and Jamie McLennan of Invoke Printing, Erik Rex of Rex Dimensional, Eric Norman and Michael Voigt of swissQprint, and Royce Dodds of Cruse. There's a lot of interesting work happening in art and art reproduction, and we're just getting started. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, I'm starting with whatever files are being supplied to us, or like I said, if we're capturing an original, working with someone like Erik Rex or a photographer to get the image captured. And then with my team, once it goes into print production, that's when we start looking at color, start looking at details. We have conversations with the artist or the customer about materials, about processes, all those things. So there's really a lot to choose from on our end, a lot of options, and it's really our job to find the right combination of those options to really make the work sing. So that's what I help do.
Nice.
Hi, I'm Jamie McLennan with Invoke, General Manager, Executive Salesperson here. To answer your question about trends in the last 10 years, I don't know if I can go back 10 years, but I can go back 6 years when we first purchased our first swissQ, which got us into this arena. So that's where it got us into the digital arena anyway, with embellishments and doing tactile printing and creating dimensional fine art and recreations. We had always been in the screen printing arena, where we were screen printing works of art like up to 4, 5, 6, and 19 colors on a screen press, which is kind of interesting. But this whole new dynamic in the last less than 10 years for us has been a total game changer. We were able to reach out to different artists that have come to us knowing that we have swissQs and saying, hey, we're looking to take our piece of work and create a dimensional piece similar to it, not always exact, but it's close reproduction that they can show at different festivals around the world. So that was kind of neat. So it's come a long way in the last 6 years for what we can handle and what we do. We've kind of pinpointed some different art shows to go to show off our capabilities, and one of them has been in Brooklyn. One of the print fairs there, which has been really neat the last couple of years. So, like I said, we're basically new to this world, but something that we've really embraced and looking forward to growing it.
New is in what time frame?
Within the last 6 years, yeah.
Okay.
So, relatively new for us.
And so Rex is very, very new then, or Erik Rex is from Rex Dimensional is very, very new because Rex Dimensional is just a couple years old now.
Yes,
right?
we just had we opened our doors 2 years ago, almost to the day.
Well, congratulations. So
Well, thank
your
you.
what's your role in fine art reproduction and how have you seen things change? And maybe we can talk a little bit about before you, as an artist,
Mhm.
and as an scanning provider.
Well, the scanning really came out of my practice making art. I I needed to get a good image. I was taking images with my iPhone to start, and that wasn't working out very well. And then it dawned on me when I started selling works that I would need a good image in perpetuity, so that I could make prints and provide materials to media outlets and web and et cetera. And it began a search for. I first started looking at cameras and camera-based systems, which they all actually are. So even the Cruse scanner it's a giant machine, but it's a very large and elaborate camera, and it captures an amazing image of the artwork. Anyway, I didn't know that there was a Cruse when I first started this, so I formed an LLC and I started looking at camera systems. I started looking at other providers, and I was very dissatisfied with the field. And this went all the way up into about 3 years ago, where I finally decided that I also wanted to capture the 3D information. I had already decided on a scanner, and then I finally found a scanner, which is Cruse, which enabled me to capture the topographical information of an artwork for reprint on the SwissQ, which is quite an amazing feat. So I went from zero with a camera phone to this, and it's been quite a learning curve.
Nice. And so let's see. Why don't we, Erik? Why don't you share? I'm sorry, Erik Norman. Share your role, or your role in fine art reproduction, and how have you seen things change in the last few years?
Well, I guess our role at swissQprint is we're putting ink on a substrate, and we're enabling artists to replicate the texture layers from that original piece. And we work with data files that are generated from that Cruse scanner that Erik is using, or others, and then we translate that into a print file to be able to reproduce. So our role in the process really is we're where ink meets the paper, and we help deliver the quality controls in terms of color consistency, color management, as well as the texture layer build up, so that you can get a very precise replication of that original piece that's been scanned on the Cruse.
Nice.
What I've seen over the last several years is a significant amount of growth and interest in the marketplace in general, wanting to do more reproductions of original works, both for reasons that you described, maybe heritage-based things, but I would say more on the democratization, making art and beautiful pieces of art more accessible to more people who maybe won't pay or can't pay for an original piece, but it is within reach to either purchase a reproduction, or to go see reproductions in different places that they don't have to go travel to. So we've seen a growing number of customers of ours entering into that space, and we've seen some companies really taking the technology, whether it be on our device or other devices, to local artists in the community, to give those local artists a path to commercialize their works.
Yeah, which is very exciting. I'm sure for the artist to have an opportunity to, and Erik, Rex, you can probably speak to this a little bit, but before we do, for artists to have the opportunity to digitize, replicate their work for so many reasons, but and one of them is to be able to sell more pieces. So before we go further on that, Royce, if you could share what your role is in art reproduction, and how have you seen things change in the last few years?
So I might start a long time ago. So like 44 years ago, I actually started studying art as a 16-year-old. Went through the traditional college system, went off to work actually in the decor industry for 20 years. So like up to the beginning of this year, it's my first involvement directly in Cruse, but I've used the Cruse scanner for the past 20 years in the decor industry. What I've seen in a transition is it's a bit like the technology's caught up with people's wishes.
Yes.
People really wanted reproductions. It wasn't just a sort of flat print on a paper. People wanted to see a structure, a texture. They wanted more the realism factor there. And the technology certainly caught up with those wishes of the people. I was actually, in a compliment to swissQprint, I was actually at the swissQprint stand today in Barcelona in the FESPA, beautiful pieces of artwork on show, real depth, brush strokes, canvas. The realism is just absolutely incredible when you look at it. And it's a really nice, large print, and it's got a realism, it's got a fantastic depth. We were talking as well to a different supplier, and we were talking about the ability to allow people with disabilities to interact with art.
Yeah.
To actually feel the structure, to feel these brushstrokes from the artists.
Yeah.
And also, people that are just extremely keen on art.
Yes.
It's certainly not the case you can walk into a gallery and start touching artworks, but when you're allowed to touch these reproductions, fantastic. And it gives you a different feel, a different access to these pieces of artwork.
Yeah, I went to a gallery opening, and the artist was talking about her work, and she was touching it, and I'm like, oh my God, we're not supposed to be doing that. We're not. I guess the artist can. But yeah, absolutely. For the visually impaired, for them to be able to see an artwork with their hands is something that is unprecedented. Michael, can you share your role in art reproduction, and how have you seen things change from the last few years?
Yeah. My role is very similar to Ian and Jamie's. So what I'm mainly doing is, we're getting in art files, whether it's from existing customers, we're helping our existing clients produce these pieces. We have in our demo center the Cruse design software. So anyone that has a Cruse that is within our support network, we can actively help them, if they're having issues with their file process, things like that. But I mean, we could go on all day, talking about like this subject and kind of things that we do in this role, whether it's color management, that is a huge thing in, being able to accurately reproduce, these scans. And it's like, if you don't have, the scan is pretty much the foundation to these art pieces. If you do not have a high resolution file, you are not going to go very far. And, Erik Rex, kind of back to his point of, taking a photo with an iPhone to now scanning something with a Cruse scanner, it's night and day. It is absolutely amazing the quality that you can pick up off of those scanners. You can see a tiny piece of dust, that could be on an art piece with those scanners, and with just how the printers have evolved over the years, higher resolution, all the different inks that you can now have in the printer, bright orange, neon inks, violet, green. There's just a ton of options, but from, file prep to sending it to the printer, color management, viewing your samples within a light booth, under D50 lighting, D65, very, very important, because you want to have it so that you know how it's going to react within that environment. You don't want to let metamerism come into play, which optical brighteners within a material could change how it views. The lighting situation changes how a piece can be viewed. So really you have to have like that consistency within the whole process to achieve some of these fine art reproductions. But from my end, I would say there's been a ton of changes within the fine art market. COVID probably being one of the biggest. It's like with people being stuck at home, wanting to upgrade their interiors in their houses, they want to have the fine art reproductions of originals, at a lower price point, things like that. But people want higher quality images. They want to be able to feel and touch them. that's something I do when I go to all, retail stores. It's like sometimes I'll feel if there's texture, and if there's none, I'm like, I don't want that. I'm like, but that's just kind of how we are here. It's just, and what we can create with the
Right.
devices and all of our partners. But it's been quite a bit that's changed.
Yeah, that's
Mike is the guy that if anybody asks the question of how do I do X, he's the answer guy.
yeah, and it sounds like there's a lot that can be done. And it's really interesting for art reproduction. A lot of museums, obviously, they've all digitized their collections, right? I mean, I don't think there's a museum out there that hasn't digitized it. But if they did it 10 years ago, if they did it 15 years ago, or if they did it, 5 years ago, the technology is changing. So there's new ways of creating a reproduction. And so that's why these conversations are so important, because what you can do today might not have been what you did years ago. And I love the fact that it can pick up everything from back in the day when Da Vinci was creating his oils and his paint from they used eggs and the horse hair. Like, you can see all those things in addition to the brush strokes. It really is very fascinating. And Michael, I think we can have a podcast just on the technical aspect of what you can do. We can have one podcast just dedicated to that. But let's move on to some of our questions here. So, hold on. Wanted to jump into. Oh, yeah, here's a good one. Can you use photography to create a one-to-one reproduction? So, Erik Rex, you had mentioned that you started out with your iPhone. Obviously, people, I think that's pretty much everyone's first go-to, is because they have, the really intelligent and advanced imagery capabilities with their smartphones. But can you use that to create a one-to-one reproduction?
The answer is yes. You can do that with an iPhone even. It's just the quality of that reproduction may suffer if you don't use the right means. So I would say if it's not if it's a very small work and you can live with the color being off or having some loss of resolution in the actual print, that may be acceptable. In my opinion, it's not. And I would never want to consider an iPhone image to be a digital asset that I would use in, say, perpetuity or, after, my estate would have access to that for another 70, 75 years or so.
Right.
So I do look at these images, these digitized files, as real assets. And when the artwork is gone or it's been destroyed or something other has happened to it, and you no longer have access to it, whether you're the artist and you just want to make prints, or you're a museum and you still want to be able to display something that's been somehow damaged beyond repair. So best quality of the image is the most important goal from where I'm coming from, and I think that stands for a lot of artists that are interested in this type of technology. There are easy ways to get around it, but to do it correctly, you really have to use the best tools available.
Mhm.
There are cameras on the market. Doesn't have to be a scanner, and I knew this early on. That that can rise to the occasion. I just find for what I'm trying to accomplish for myself and the artists that I work with, that the Cruse scanner is the best machine for the job.
Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've got some, but I'm not sure. So, I mean, it comes down and I hope I'm not going to be offensive here, but it's a term that we use in digital print in Europe quite a lot, and it's to do with shit in, shit out. So yeah, a camera, exactly. You could take a photograph and you could print it. You can print it quite happily at home. Looks great. It's fantastic. It's a reproduction for your quality, for the quality you need. But if you really want to talk about reproduction at a high end, and I would also argue that the Cruse scanner is not a scanner, it is a camera studio. This thing is so high end as a camera studio. As we've just heard, you're picking up grains of sand or hair. It's that fine. Try and do that with an iPhone, and it's about the quality levels. If you really want high end, you're going to have to scan photo in really high end qualities. When you see the resolutions and the depth of the color that the Cruse can achieve, like we've said, you could do it with an iPhone. You can do it with good cameras, but then you're starting with a single file. We can scan to very, very large resolutions. We can scan 4 meters by 3 meters with one of the larger portal scanners we've got. To try and do this with the camera system as well, you're going to have to take hundreds of little photographs and stitch them together. But that's it. You've got an image. You do not have the bitmap. You don't have the depth. You don't have the 3D surface haptic structures that you really do need when you're printing. And that's the joy of taking that information onto the right printer to achieve the results. And that's what makes that,
I would add in that I think, if there's somebody in the audience and you're at a gallery owner, or you're an artist, or you're a museum and you're wanting to do reproductions, when you look at the serious players in the reproduction space, the high-end quality people are doing it with the systems that Royce and Erik are talking about. So I think one way of discerning what level of quality or reproduction capability are you going to achieve, partner with somebody that has invested in the right tools to bring the level of quality to the reproduction that's equivalent to the quality of and reputation of that original piece. And I think, while you can do it on an iPhone or other camera system, as Erik Rex pointed out, it can be done, but there's significant trade-offs in that. So I think the serious players are making the investment choices to do it the right way for all of the things that Erik and Royce just described.
Yeah, I think that it really comes down to the end result. It's not like you're building a home and you're looking at a blueprint and then the end result of the home. It's like, okay, well, yeah, I guess it kind of looks like the original, like the blueprint. We're talking like having an original artwork by whomever, it could be the artist, the living artist, or, from back in the day, and matching the output side by side and saying they're identical. And that takes skill and that takes technology. But that's where we are today. And this is where the market is shifting from, you go to a museum store and you see prints that are flat, that are poster prints. There's museums dedicated to posters. But that's not what we're talking about. Like the Guggenheim, for example, has flat prints of their artwork. But what we're talking about is something where you can see it's just identical. And to the expert's eyes, they can't tell the difference until they touch it. And then they can see, or they turn the reproduction around and they see the material. And let me ask, what are some of the what are some of the what's a substrate? What are the options that artists have with reproducing their artwork? I received a sample and it's a very rigid piece. Erik, I think you have some examples. Erik Rex, you have some examples of some some of the output of your reproductions. Um, what can an artist expect to see with a one-to-one reproduction, the final piece?
Well, one of the substrates, and I think it's my favorite so far to work with is called ACM, aluminum composite material, which is basically two sheets of aluminum that sandwich a type of epoxy foam. It's rigid, very rigid. Um, a typical work. So I can show you an example right here. So this actually is ACM. Now there's some backing. This was hanging at a show, actually at the Brooklyn Fine Art Print Fair. This is the back of ACM, and then on this side we have the art. And as you see, I'm touching it with my hand, so I'm not really concerned. Just like we'd spoken about, you can touch this. Do I recommend it? Not necessarily. It is art, but it's durable, much more durable than an original oil painting. But so this is only 3 millimeters thick. It's very thin and it's very light. So it's it's very similar to the original. And if you're interested, I can show you the original also.
Yes, that would be wonderful to see. And what is
Sure.
that you showed us? What is that your work?
This is a painting I made back in 2025, I think it was 2024, for the Brooklyn Fine Art Print Fair. So this is the only UV resin textured artwork print that was presented at that fair, and
Nice.
and it was really interesting to. Now we had so I was at the booth with Jamie and Ian from Invoke, and I basically just helped explain to people what they were looking at, and encouraged them to touch the art, which you could tell that most people felt they were breaking a taboo, and there's a very guilty, uh, uh, they people you could tell they felt guilty touching it, but they were amazed when they did. So
Yeah.
anyway, I'll show you the original real quickly.
Guilty pleasures are the best, huh?
That's right. This, this is this is the original. So I can hold them up both simultaneously, so we can see print and the original. So
Okay, so there's an orange area.
yeah, that's
One's upside down, Erik.
oh, is that right? Which
Yeah.
one is it? Okay, I thought it looked kind of funny.
There you go.
That's the
great.
original, and I'm going to put that down because it is perishable. And
Well,
I'll show you the print one more time.
Yeah. To your question, Heidi, you can, ACM's fantastic, but you could produce on paper, you could produce on canvas, there's a number of both rigid and more flexible substrates that you could do reproductions on. It really boils down to what's the artist's preference.
Okay.
We see it all over the map, what people are choosing to print on, and then that's one of the beauties of you could take a reproduction and maybe make it a little more interesting by putting it on a different type of a substrate. Put it on something with more of a metallic backing, and give it a metallic effect. This is where the creativity and the craftsmanship of the artist combined with the printer can make some pretty magical output, because printers like Jamie and Ian, they're bringing an artistry to the table as well. And when you bridge that with an artist's vision for what this could do, maybe it's a reproduction, or maybe it's a reproduction with a twist. You can deliver all sorts of, it's almost like a remix of the original art. and now you can reach a different audience. And that's where, people like Invoke plus an Erik become a powerful combination.
Yeah, I would like to add on to that actually. So one thing I always try to keep in mind when we're doing any kind of reproduction that, it is ultimately going to be something different, and that a lot of times we've done a lot really with contemporary art where it's being produced where the print is really the final piece of art rather than a reproduction of an original. And even if the goal is to try to reproduce the original as faithfully as possible, you got to keep in mind that the reproduction and the original aren't necessarily going to be in the same room together. If they were, there wouldn't be a need for reproduction. So, the reproduction really does have to stand on its own. And it is a unique set of properties involved with the inks and the materials and the varnishes and whatever we have at our disposal, the textures that we're adding to things and whatnot. That whatever the print is, it does have to stand on its own as a piece of art in itself. And like you were saying about doing like a remix or playing up certain properties of the print that may not exist in the original, to create something that's maybe interesting and not more interesting than the original, but interesting in a different way, and gives a new level to the work. That's always a good thing to strive for. I think you can go a little bit crazy trying to just focus on doing an exact duplicate of something.
Well, I think
Eric Norman said, if I can, the remix of an original, which is kind of cool, and going to the substrates you asked about, like I like cool remixes, printing on something on acrylic where you can print the background and then put the texture on the front, which is really cool. And then Nina makes a great embellishment paper that we've been trying out and using successfully with some textured prints and adding drop gloss and stuff like that. So you can get a wide range of stuff between metal, acrylic paper, and some canvases that we've worked with. So a lot of different things you can use, and they all work differently, but all help lend to that reproduction depending on what the artist is looking for.
I love the direction of this conversation, because there's so much that we can dive into, but a remix of the original is that's a whole avenue that we can pursue, and there's so much that can be done, and I feel that's where the technology comes into play from the capture, because there's an artist, I'm on the East Coast, there's an artist in Asbury Park. You guys might be familiar with the little town over here.
Know the town. That's a Bruce Springsteen town.
There's a studio of it's called White Hill, White something, White. My gosh, it's not coming to me, but I'll find out. They do reproductions, and the artist, he captures it. He creates an artwork, then he digitizes it, then he zooms in and zooms in and zooms in and zooms in, and that piece becomes its own artwork that he prints. And so what the remix of the original, I love that term, and I think that's a whole segment that we can talk about. So Erik Rex, you have a customer that you and that Rex Dimensional and Invoke worked with initially, right? That you want to share, that you guys collaborated. And is it a remix of the original, or tell us about that, if you could, please.
Well, Invoke, that was actually the first job that we worked on, and Invoke brought me in on that project, and to scan some works that were sent to us by abstract expressionist Robert Longo. And it's interesting because the first thing that was scanned, it was art, and it was a collage. It was actually two collages, and that would have been fine. But what Robert did was he used these scans and the original artwork sent to us, he used that as one of the components of the final output. And so that became, those scans were then treated differently at Robert's studio and sent back to us for revision, and we started doing test prints. And these works, they were one of a kind. It was the ingredients of an artwork that we dealt with. The print was the actual art.
Yeah.
And it's each, we did two separate pieces. Each was individual, unique. I think what, Jamie, you might know, 55 by 88 inches. Is that correct?
Yeah, we ended up reproducing them at 55 by 88 inches on a 6 mil ACM material. But the artwork supplied was roughly like 20 by 28 or so, which we took and blew up to make this artwork for Robert. That was we did two pieces out of a 5-part series that was in Pace in London. So it was really, really neat. It was something at the time we had not done that large before. We were mostly working with normal, 22 by 28s or 24-36 smaller pieces. So this was a really cool collaboration between us with what Robert painted and created, and then going back and forth to make sure we got what he was looking to do for these final pieces, and then mounting them on a huge frame that they supplied and creating them and shipping them to overseas. So it was a fun project. It took a while. And for a 55 by 88 with roughly, 40 some layers of white ink and color and clears, that took us roughly 7 or 8 hours to print one of them, I think, one day. So it was a cool project. We had video of it and everything. It was a neat learning experience, and something we tried to build on from there.
So how high of the print off the print was the ink?
It's you can answer that better than I can.
Maybe a 1/16 of an inch. I think. Yeah, I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, it was probably between the 16th and roughly an eighth, depending on where the brush strokes were and parts like that. But yeah, his collage was actually some of it was probably a half-inch off the paper, because it was a lot of stuff pasted on. So we gave him, it was somewhere a little bit less than that, but it was a neat representation of what he created.
Yeah, like what Erik was getting at is that what was interesting, this kind of taught us a lot about how we think about this stuff, like we were just talking about, and it really didn't all come together until the end when we saw the final result and how great it really was. But, the original painting that he had sent us to work with, was a collage of magazine photographs in black and white, I believe acrylic paint, that was with really heavy brush strokes, very dimensional. We captured that original, but we came to understand that this was just a kind of a disposable intermediary process for him. And he took, this information that we created, and like you said, we, brought it up in scale 3 times. And, he turns around to us and says, "Hey, turn the whole thing blood red." And then we looked at different colors of red for about 3 weeks until we got just the right one. And then, we tried out every single different varnish that we could on the thing, and every one of us doubted his decision to use high gloss. And then we printed the thing, and added the high gloss was the very last layer, and it pulled the entire thing together and, proved that he knows about 10 times more about art than we ever will. So it was a really great learning experience. He came to our shop on basically the day that we were going to do the final mounting for the frames and to review everything. And he was just fascinated by the process. And it was a good place to start. Like Erik said, this was our first project together. And it was like a crash course. We learned everything. And we've done a bunch of really interesting stuff since then. So.
Very nice. Do you want to share any other projects that and swissQ, Royce, and Erik, Norman, or Jamie and Ian, Michael, like any other projects that you want to share that you have said, wow, this is really cool?
Well, if you don't mind, can I just talk about artists been really early adopters of technology? Because it is fascinating through history. When you actually look at artists The camera obscura was an early adoption by artists so they could reproduce what was visually there. So they've always been this very, very early, very advanced form of user of the technology of the time that wasn't commonplace.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the fact that there's an artist that scans an art piece and reproduces this in a larger format. And it shows you that they're using the scanner and the printer as now a tool to create new art pieces.
Yes, yes.
And it's such a great advancement. You know, reproduction, absolutely fantastic, not a problem. But to actually think about using the scanner, to think about using the printer as a form of medium to create a new art piece, shows you an insight, really, that they have. Artists tend to have this technology insight.
And how has it changed? I mean, the technology's been around for decades now. Digitization has been around for decades. How has it changed now? And I guess there have always been tools available, or there's always been artists who've used these tools, like the one I mentioned from Asbury Park. They've used these tools for years, but do they have more options now? Well, what has changed for them? And I guess there's a bigger market out there of people, of artists that might not be aware of what they can do with their either original, because Robert Longo, it sounds like he had a vision for what he wanted to produce and used Invoke's services to create that final result. He didn't bring the final results, right? He used the printer.
No, he actually started looking at a screen printer in New York that could do that size screen printing. And they were like, we cannot build the layers that you want, and introduced them to us and said, reach out to Jamie and Ian. They can help you with this because that's what they do. I know what they have. We have a relationship with this artist, not artist, but company in New York that does screen printing. And he reached out to us and said, look, this is the company you want to deal with. They can help you get to that, what you're envisioning with your art. And that's how that conversation started. So.
Yeah. And so connecting with the community.
Mm-hmm.
So you're letting your network know that if there's an artist that is looking for XYZ, this is where they can go to.
Yes.
Nice.
From our point, I mean, swissQprint since 2007 and even a little before, certainly the UV print capability was there. The advancements come in the form of just continually perfecting that, right? Precision dot placement and advancements in ink technology, those sorts of things that are normal, and marrying that up with advanced scanning technologies and so forth. So I think you're right. This is not new. There's evolution of technology across the board, but I also think you start to see more and more adoption. And with more adoption, people start to get a little more creative. They see what other people have done. They start to try to, bring similar ideas to the table. We see, the massive rise of direct access to, home decor and online providers of different home decor and corporate interiors and things of that nature. Again, gives it the whole marketplace an acceleration around doing these types of creative projects. And so I think we're at a point where if you will, the vertical market around reproduced or original digital artworks, that where the printer, the scanner just become, it's like adding brushes, to the artist. We just become more tools available for them to use to bring something interesting into the world.
Right. Either as part of the original to recreate and remix the original, and I still love that. And also to have an end result being an original.
Mm-hmm.
The reproduced, or it's not reproduced, the final output is the original.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm looking at the time. We are getting close to our 2 o'clock mark. Um, so let me see here. Does anybody have any thoughts that they want to share that we didn't touch on? Are you seeing a shift in any direction? Sounds like the shift is just leaning towards, that art reproduction is gaining in popularity. There's a huge opportunity for it in the art world. But are you guys noticing any other shifts? And obviously it also, the remixing of the original or the creation of an original.
I think there's more print service providers that are, entering the space. I mean, like Jamie mentioned, Invoke went down this path, 6 years ago. And I think from our standpoint, we at least within our customer community, we see more and more trying to bring from the print service provider standpoint, these are higher value things to produce than standard, let's say, sign and display, right? So there's a commercial interest in being in this space, but that commercial interest is good for the printer, it's good for the artist, it's good for everybody in the whole value chain. So we see more people gravitating toward kind of I'll call it higher end ability to produce printed product. And I think people are realizing in this, massively digital age that we all live in, that print, it stimulates your senses different than digital because people can touch it. Depending on what you print on, you can smell it. I mean, it's tangible. It has emotion. It brings meaning. I mean, it print in its pure form, it's communication. It creates connectedness between, a person and the product. So, I think people are moving back toward that, and just art becomes one way to do it because it's such a great way of, expressing yourself creatively. And so I think that, maybe we're coming back around, hopefully, to some things that maybe were more traditionally interesting, and print becomes a medium to help that.
Yeah, coming back to the analog world.
Yeah.
But I see if some of that reproduction in not just reproduction of fine art, but in other areas too, where we're using the textures and the capabilities to create wallpaper or to create even POP displays, where they're kind of taking from the fine art world and adding that to their newer work. So, and adding the textures and adding the colors and doing stuff like that to make their product more to show it off a little bit more. So that's something else it's another whole genre of this, and we could spend another hour on that, but it's it leads down another avenue. So, and having the right equipment, the presses, the scanner and all that, and having the knowledge how to do that, and it kind of helps us in a way that brings us to the forefront. When people say, hey, we need somebody that can do that, our name comes up. So that's a big help. So
I agree, because it comes on the enhancement of services. You can do a flat print, looks fine, absolutely okay. But the minute you start to get a light play on this surface, you do start to question, is this real? And in a sense, yes, it is real because it's its own object. In the swissQprint, the prints I've seen today at the FESPA, I mean, really stunning. And I was trying to show people with my light on my iPhone what was really going on. Then one of the guys goes, you can touch it. And again, there's that childish, and I don't mean that detrimentally, a sort of childish, no, I'm not allowed to touch it, even though you've told me to touch it. And they're very, very careful about touching it. They're very sensitive, but it creates an emotion. The minute you touch the object, it creates an emotion and a link between you and the object.
Oh my gosh.
It takes it to a new level.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, God. Well, I'm just thinking. I mean, imagine your most favorite painting in the world that you have a connection with, that you've loved forever, and then now being able to actually feel the brushstrokes, to feel the texture of it. I think I've never experienced that, and I think that would be absolutely amazing.
And if you can have that at a museum where your favorite piece of art is, and if they had a little display on the side saying, here's a highlighted area, how the brushstrokes work, how this looks, how this works, that would change the experience of going to the museum.
Mm-hmm. They did this at the Rijksmuseum.
Do they?
Oh,
Yes, they have a scan. They printed it extremely largely. So it's oversized, but it allows you to really feel the object, the painting. And it's just an experience that is like, it's a bit beyond, it's hard to explain it properly, but it takes it to a completely different level. When you've got people that don't have the ability of normal sight, it allows them to feel the painting. And that for them, their interaction with this becomes totally different as well.
What
Because they're
museum?
feeling the brushstrokes. The Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam.
So
And I think it should still be there. It was printed 3 years ago, and I'm pretty sure it was the girl with the pearl earring. I might have to check, but I'm pretty sure it's the girl with the pearl earring. They printed it really quite largely, and you can scale in as well. But the prints aren't absolutely massive, but they've enhanced these prints and they've zoomed in. So you can almost see the lacquer, you can see the cracks in the painting, but you can feel them on this scale.
I wonder why they enlarged it. Why would they enlarge it?
I think it's possibly to allow people to really feel. I mean, you can sort of feel a brushstroke, but when you actually have a brushstroke that's, like a few centimeters wide, you actually feel the hair in the brushstroke almost,
So
and
it
just takes it to that emotional contact.
So they reproduced a textured print.
Yeah.
Interesting. Because
there was a book at the FESPA today talking exactly about this. I knew I should have bought it. I'll have another look tomorrow, but it's a great idea, but it takes it beyond just an idea, and you're talking about an artist that as recently modern has created pieces and zoomed in and created his artwork.
Yeah.
It's fantastic, but to scan into a master painting from the last century and previous and actually see how their brushstrokes or their palette knives have moved across. It just, like I say, it just takes to a new emotional level. Printing on different surfaces brings you such an enhancement again of that. You could print, like we talked about, on canvas, on alloy, and on other objects. And it allows you to be recreative, shall we say. I don't want to use the term recycle, but you could recycle really classic pieces of artwork onto different objects.
Yeah, remix it.
Yeah, completely. It becomes a very creative process then.
Yes, I love that. And I love that. I love that term. I love the direction of today's conversation. I'm definitely going to, I just Googled the girl with the pearl earring by Vermeer, and it says that it's scanned in, but it's not the museum, but they have a ultra high definition scan of that. See every crack and blob of paint they're saying. So yeah, that's a nice little rabbit hole we can go down. And that's the beauty of art, is that there's so many avenues to pursue. And I think it's great how we touched on using equipment that is not necessarily viewed as an interactive I don't know if it's interactive, but I mean, an artist can work with suppliers, with partners to create something that they would never have been able to create before on their own. And that's one of the takeaways that I'm getting from today. So, and I guess, so how do you guys have any other thoughts or subjects that you'd like to?
I actually have to run because I've got a 1:00 that I'm already 5 minutes late to. So
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
I'm gonna sign off, but thank you guys. It's
Thanks,
great.
Eric.
See you, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, see you. Bye-bye.
Anybody
Bye.
else have thoughts or comments before we wrap up?
I've just got one last comment. I think it's a way of looking at the technology. It's as important as the brushes and the paints were in the last century, because it's new technology. It allows you to create these artworks. And when the artists adopt new technology, they're always the ones that really push the technology as well, which I find fascinating.
Oh,
They're the most demanding, and they're the ones that are very inquisitive, what can it do, but what can it not do? Because I'd like to know what it can't do, because I might push it in that direction.
But then they'll fail and then find out where and then make the art.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I love artists because they're so inquisitive about everything, and they're so creative, but they're also amazingly technical people.
Yeah.
Well, they've got a different view on the way things could work. Let's put it that way.
And I think that it's important to find a partner that aren't just pressing buttons, because there are companies that are buying equipment, and they, if you want to scan, they'll press a button, they'll get a scan. But what Eric Rex brings to the table, is he's an artist, and I think that is so important for the artists who are choosing to work with him or Invoke, is that, there's so many options out there, but what the artist wants to find, what the museums, what the gallerists want, are the companies and the partners that bring more to the table, so that the end result is what they're looking for, and maybe going beyond, like, oh, we can do this, we could do this, we can do this, whether it's for the current project or for future projects. And that's where this podcast, I think, is really important to talk about. What are some of the options? What can do? And yeah, so I'm really thrilled about this, and I appreciate everyone's time today in sharing your insight. And each one of us, I know, can have our own podcast or episode talking about like the granular details, and hopefully we'll be able to get to that, because this is really cool stuff. And when you push the boundaries, what happens is that it pushes things along the chain, so that the technology gets better and better, and the feedback that gets provided gets, we want the companies, which I think is, I think you guys, that are hearing the feedback from the community and saying, okay, let's incorporate that into the next release. Let's get these features so that, this is what customers want, or this is what we think the market will be looking for in a few years' time. So yeah, this dialogue is really important. Any other thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah, I'd like to add maybe one or two things. I think a real benefit that I've experienced, not just running a digitization operation and rendering, all this for print, but the fact that as an artist working with Invoke and Ian specifically is an artist, and there's another artist, Carl, on their team as well. But we all kind of understand the same language, and we're trying to find ways to use the technology to the best of its ability, what it can provide. We're trying to maximize, and we really are working hard to figure out how we can get beyond that. And speaking that same language really helps us, like not just problem solve or troubleshoot. It's not all problems and troubleshooting. It's real creation. And 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 not all artists, and I certainly wasn't aware when I started this. Not all artists know about this, and I really feel that part of the job is to make them aware of it. And sometimes that takes like a tactile work in their hands. Like you can't show this, like I try on the camera, but that's not the same. It helps, but you see a light go off, in these artists, and they'll ask, "Can you do this?" And you may not even have the answer, but we figure it out, and we're able to do things that you would. It's kind of like working with analog recording of sound. Um, the whole world changed for analog musicians. Most musicians are analog at this point, but when it switched over to digital technology, all of a sudden it was like you had all of these new tools and parameters that you could stretch and bend and change, and all of that applies in the same exact way to this capture of light and in making art, whether you're capturing art or you're making new art, with captured light, for print. And it's really a lot of fun, like with the Cruse. I mean, I'm really a very blessed person to be using this equipment, and as good of a job as it does, like I try to also, like Royce said, I try to figure out what it can't do, or what can I do with it that maybe it's not supposed to do, and there's very exciting things that come out of that process as well. So yeah, I'm very passionate about this, and I think it's a very exciting new world, and part of why this is not yeah, it's been around for 20 years or how long. But what's really happening now is that now it's becoming part of a more conscious awareness. It's reaching artists that this is actually a possibility, and part of what I do and Jamie Ian also do is we make artists aware that they have these new tools that they can work with, and they don't have to just copy what another artist is doing. They can dream of what they want to do with it, and yeah, that's kind
and reproduce. So what
that's right.
they'll be able to reproduce time and again, right? So that Robert
Yeah,
Longo, you guys have that file, so
yeah,
or has that file, and you guys, it's something that can be created over and over again, and that's
right.
it's value.
That possibility exists now. I imagine if the Pace gallery burned down in London, and Robert's work went with it, that we would be able to print him another one precisely.
It's on display at a gallery, or it's for sale
Well,
at a gallery?
no, I don't know that it's for sale. I believe it's part of a collection. Those two combined collections. There was another one. So we made two pieces. One went with a set of 5 works. Each of those works was 55 by 88. They all were side by side on the wall. One set of 5 at Pace Gallery, and this is during the Frieze Festival in London. The other set of 5. This is a joint exhibition between the two galleries. The other one was at Thaddeus Ropac, and I don't think that any of those sets or collections were for sale. I don't know, but during the Frieze Festival, I flew over there just for a couple of reasons. One, I felt it was an extremely important moment for me and for the work that we did. Excuse me, sorry. And but the other one is that I wanted to see the proof positive of this process and what we could actually accomplish. So to go over to London for the openings and just to see these works hanging in these world-class galleries. It was like a really phenomenal experience, and it showed me like how far we can go with this. And that was job one. So it was really an incredible experience.
That was a great start.
Yeah.
Okay, any other thoughts before we wrap up? Ian, you're an artist as well?
Yeah. Yeah, so I've have a background in art and publishing, print publishing, over the last 2 decades or so. I do some curating on a local level, some galleries in Philadelphia that I've done a few shows with, and mostly inspired by the machines that we have access to in our shop. I mean, we have these world class SwissQ printers. They're like sports cars basically. So I have lots of friends that are artists, and I started thinking like how can we use these things for our community to push and do new things that we haven't done before. So and yeah, like I said, a lot of people in printing have an arts background. I mean, a lot of us start out in art school, and we follow different directions. Some of us end up in like the technical fields like printing, but we never lose that love and appreciation for art. And it's really like you said, it's our secret weapon. So when you come to us, it's like we're not just pressing the button. We're gonna smuggle some of our own creativity into the process as well. So like I said, it gives us a sense of pride too about even though Robert's the artist, the fact that we had a little bit of a hand in it and some of the key decisions, and it's nice to know that your work is touching people like that. So
yeah, that's cool. And we didn't talk too much, and I guess we could do this another time, about projects. Some other projects that you've worked on, and or maybe Ian, like I said, each one of these discussions is a rabbit hole that we can go down and learn more about. And I think that would be a lot of fun because it's inspirational. So why don't we leave it on that note? Any other thoughts before we wrap up?
Well, I think each person here has a passion, and you can see the way people are talking about it. It's an absolute passion, and it's a joy, and it's getting that out to people. We had an artist actually in Cruse of the company last week, and when I'd scanned the artwork and showed them the scan, the enjoyment I got from their enjoyment of what they were seeing visually, because they'd taken photographs before and they were going, this is a different level.
Yeah,
that's great.
And then taking those files and taking them to a really good print shop. I mean, that takes it then to a different level again. And the passion from each person on this podcast has been very clear to me. I mean, it's great. I love seeing this.
yes. And I have to say, Royce, you bring up an important point. I didn't even think about the fact of what the artist must feel when they see their painting being zoomed in, being captured. I think that is, could it be like having a child that graduates from college? It's like they've reached that point, and now what are the opportunities, right? The opportunities are endless for that now. And it's all up to, that owner, that parent, like how can they guide this beautiful piece of life that they created? How can they shape it? How can they guide it in the world to have a positive influence, to have a positive impact? I mean, there's so many ways that artists are or why they paint. That's a whole other conversation. But now it's like their creation is they can multiply it. And that's got to be an interesting feeling.
But what I'm talking about as well, the passion that is shown here with everybody on the podcast, I think each person here, when they've helped an artist or helped somebody, there's a sense of I've helped you on your journey to be more creative.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And that's so clear to me, and it's wonderful to hear. It really is.
Yeah. Well, I think on that note, we shall wrap up for today. Thank you so much, everyone, for being on the call. If there will be more discussions, so keep an eye out for future communications and vice versa. If something comes up, if you work on the project that's really cool, or something new comes out that you say, oh my gosh, we need to tell the world, please share it, because art reproduction is really, really important in our world today. So with that, we shall sign off. Thank you again for your time, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you,
very
everyone.
much, Heidi. It's very nice speaking with everybody.
Nice to meet you.
It's been great. Thank you so much.
Nice to meet you all.
Bye, guys.